I never believed a perfect marriage could unravel so quickly. But the truth is that perfection is often just an illusion, a mask polished for the world to see, while the cracks underneath widen with every hidden secret. I thought I knew my wife better than anyone. Before I continue, I just want to thank you for listening to my story. It means more than you know. If you feel comfortable, tell me in the comments where you are watching from and what time it is right now. Now, let me take you into my story. After all, we had built a life together in New York, a life of routine dinners, weekend getaways, and polite smiles at parties. But when you spend years trusting someone blindly, you miss the warning signs until one day the mask slips. And you realize the person standing beside you has been playing a dangerous game all along. It started subtly, small inconsistencies that anyone else would have ignored, late nights at the office that never matched her calendar, hushed phone calls that ended the moment I walked into the room, unexplained receipts tucked away in drawers. I told myself I was imagining things, that my mind was simply exhausted from long days at work, but deep down my instincts whispered that something darker was unfolding. And the more I tried to ignore it, the louder that whisper became, until it was impossible to silence. I began to watch her more carefully, not in anger but in curiosity. I wanted to understand who she truly was when she thought no one was looking. I noticed how her smile lingered a second too long with strangers, how her phone was always face down on the table, how she seemed distracted even during our conversations. It was as if she was living in two worlds, one where she played the role of a devoted wife, and another where she was crafting something I could not yet see. And in that gap between the two roles was where her secret lived. The breaking point came on a rainy Thursday evening when she told me she was attending a charity event with her colleagues. Something about the way she rushed through the explanation felt rehearsed, too smooth to be casual. So I followed, keeping a distance as she hailed a cab and slipped into the crowded streets of Manhattan. I expected to see her arrive at a bright ballroom or a hotel lobby filled with professionals. Instead, she entered a dimly lit cafe on the Lower East Side where a man was already waiting. I froze, my heart pounding, not from jealousy but from the realization that I was finally staring at the hidden door to the world she had kept locked away from me. When I stepped closer, careful not to reveal myself, I watched as she leaned across the table, her voice low but sharp, her hands moving across papers that looked nothing like casual notes. I saw numbers, charts, contracts, all of it exchanged with the precision of someone making a deal. She wasn't meeting a lover, she was meeting a partner in something much more dangerous. And at that moment I understood, she was building a trap, one carefully designed, and somehow I was at the center of it. The night after I followed her to that cafe, I could not sleep. The image of her leaning across the table with that stranger stayed in my head. It was not an affair, it was something sharper, something planned. She was not chasing love. She was building a move that felt dangerous. For the next week, I pretended nothing had changed. I smiled at dinner. I asked about her day. I kissed her goodnight. But behind my mask, I was pulling at the threads of her secret. Each time she left the apartment, I checked her drawers. Each time she showered, I scrolled through her phone. What I found confirmed my fears. There were bank statements under another name. There were transfers in large amounts that made no sense. There were emails written in code. The man from the cafe was everywhere in those files. He was not just a stranger, he was her partner. Together, they were moving money into accounts tied to my name. The shock hit me hard. She was not only lying, she was framing me. If anyone looked at those accounts, they would see me as the thief. She would be clean, free, even pitted as the wife of a criminal. I would be left to carry her crime. It was cruel, and it was smart. I knew I had two choices. I could confront her and risk being destroyed before I had proof. Or I could stay silent and gather evidence until I had enough to turn her trap against her. I chose silence. Revenge is not about speed, it is about patience. So I began to collect everything. I took screenshots, I took photos, I saved her calls when I could. Every piece was another part of the puzzle. But as the picture formed, I saw how dangerous it was. She was not working alone. She had ties to people with money and reach in this city. People who could make problems vanish. If I was not careful, I would be the next problem they erased. The more I uncovered, the more I realized how deep her plan ran. This was not a sudden scheme. She had been preparing for months, maybe even years. Every detail was designed to make me the perfect fall guy. The loyal husband with steady habits, the man no one would suspect until the evidence pointed straight at him. One night, she came home late, her lipstick faint but smudged, her voice calm as she told me about a long meeting. I watched her place her purse on the counter, her movements smooth, practiced. She kissed me on the cheek, smiled, and asked if I had eaten. For a moment, I wondered if I had imagined everything. But then I saw the edge of a contract peeking from her purse, the same kind of papers I had photographed before. The mask she wore was flawless, but I had already seen behind it. I knew I needed help. Alone, I could only gather pieces. To fight her, I needed someone who understood how to stitch those pieces into a weapon. I reached out to an old friend, a quiet man who once worked as an investigator before walking away from that life. He owed me a favor, and when I told him what I had found, his face grew tense. He said this was bigger than I thought, that her partners were not just greedy but ruthless. Together we started building a case. He showed me how to trace hidden accounts, how to track coded emails back to their source, how to follow money that was meant to vanish into shadows. Each night after she slept I worked, my laptop glowing in the dark, my fingers cold on the keys. Each discovery felt like another nail in her plan, but also another risk to my life if she realized I was watching. Days turned into weeks, and the mask she wore never cracked. She laughed at dinners. She made plans for vacations. She held my hand in public. To the world, we were perfect. But I knew every smile was part of her performance, every word rehearsed, every move a step in her trap. And then came the call. A number I did not recognize rang one evening when she was out. I answered in a voice I had never heard, said only one sentence. "You are running out of time." Then the line went dead. My blood turned to ice. She knew, or someone close to her knew. The game I thought I was playing in silence was no longer silent. Now I was inside her trap, and if I made one wrong move, it would close on me for good. The call haunted me for days. I replayed the voice in my mind, deep and calm, like someone delivering a warning rather than a threat. If they knew what I was doing, then every step I took was already being watched. My apartment no longer felt safe. The walls seemed thinner, the shadows longer. Even her smile at breakfast felt heavier, like she was daring me to admit I knew the truth. I stopped moving carelessly. I hid my files in places she would never think to check. I bought a cheap phone under a fake name and used it only to contact my investigator friend. Every message was short, every call quick, as if the fewer words we used the safer we were. But the pressure was building. It was only a matter of time before the trap snapped shut. Then fate gave me a chance. One night, she left her laptop open on the counter, a rare mistake for someone as careful as her. I waited until I heard the water running in the shower. My hands shook as I slid into the chair and opened her files. At first I saw the same coded emails and hidden statements, but then I found a folder marked Final. Inside was the blueprint of her entire plan. The documents laid it all out. Large transfers timed for the next month. Shell companies registered under names that matched mine. A timeline of meetings and staged evidence designed to collapse all at once. At the end of the file was a single line that froze my breath. All of this concludes with his arrest. My heart raced, but at the same time I felt something new, not fear, but clarity. She was not just clever, she was arrogant. She thought she had already won, and arrogance leaves cracks. I copied every file onto a small drive I kept hidden in my shoe. When she stepped out of the shower, her hair damp and her smile soft, I kissed her like nothing had changed. But inside I knew the shift had begun. She thought she was playing the final act of her game, but I was already rewriting the ending. The next morning, I met my investigator friend at a small diner far from the city. I handed him the drive, and when he saw the contents his eyes widened. "This is not just fraud," he said, "this is conspiracy. If we play this right, we can turn it on her. If we play it wrong, you vanish." The choice was mine, but the truth was clear. The trap she had built for me was sharp and ready. But now I had the key to close it on her instead. The days that followed felt like walking a tightrope. Every glance she gave me, every question she asked, carried weight. I wondered if she sensed the shift, if she noticed the calm in my eyes that was not fear but quiet resolve. I moved carefully, never breaking routine, never letting her see the war that was unfolding beneath the surface. My investigator friend worked fast. He traced the accounts, the transfers, the coded emails, until the picture was undeniable. She was not only setting me up, she was laundering money for people far above her. Names surfaced, men and women with influence, People who would protect her as long as she delivered. If they knew she had slipped, if they knew I had the files, then both of us were in danger. I knew I could not go to the police yet. A single mistake and the evidence would vanish, twisted to frame me even faster. I needed a stage, a moment so public that no one could silence it. Not her, not her partners, not anyone. Until that moment, I had to keep living as if I was blind. One night, she poured me a glass of wine, her eyes watching me too closely as I drank. She asked about my day, her tone sweet, but her smile stiff. She leaned across the table and said we should take a trip soon, just the two of us. My heart pounded, because I knew what she meant. It was not a trip, it was an exit. A place where she could finish her plan and walk away free. I nodded and smiled, playing the role she expected. But in my head, I marked the date. Whatever trap she had prepared, I would be ready. The breakthrough came from my friend. He had managed to intercept a message between her and the man from the cafe. They were planning the final transfer, the one that would seal my fate. It would happen in 3 weeks, and the money would land under my name. The moment it cleared, the proof of her crime would become mine. That night I stood at the window, the city lights glowing below. For years I had trusted her, believed in the picture we painted together. Now all I saw was the end. But in that ending, I also saw my chance. She had trapped me, but in her arrogance, she had left me the tools to turn the game on her. The stage was almost set. All I needed was the right moment to pull the trigger. The night of the final transfer arrived faster than I expected. The air in our apartment felt colder, heavier, as if the walls themselves knew what was coming. She moved with precision, her phone in her hand, her eyes sharp, her smile faint. To her, this was the night everything ended, the night her husband became the villain and she walked away clean. I followed the script she had written for me. I sat at the table, I nodded when she spoke. I even kissed her cheek when she left to take her call. But my mind was racing, not with fear, but with the knowledge that this was also my night. My investigator friend had prepared everything. Copies of her files, traces of her emails, records of the transfers. All of it had been handed to people who would not look the other way, people with no ties to her partners. All I had to do was wait for her move, and then strike when the stage was too public for her to silence. She returned to the table with a glow in her eyes. The transfer was done. I could see it in her smile. She poured 2 glasses of wine and handed me one, her hand brushing mine, as if to seal the lie of our marriage one last time. I raised the glass, I smiled, but inside I was already gone. The next morning she dressed carefully, as if preparing for an ordinary day. She kissed me lightly and left for a meeting, but I knew where she was really going. She would meet her partner, confirm the money, and celebrate the success of her plan. What she did not know was that the meeting would not be private. When she entered the cafe, she found more than her partner waiting. Seated at the back were men in dark suits, quiet but observant, men who had already seen every file, every transfer, every message. My investigator friend had delivered the evidence, and the stage was set. I watched from across the street, hidden in the crowd. Her smile faltered when she noticed the strangers, her partner shifting uneasily in his chair. Then one of the men placed a folder on the table. I could see her face pale even from where I stood. Her perfect game, her flawless trap, was collapsing in front of her eyes. For the first time, I saw her mask break. Her mask cracked the moment the folder opened. She reached for her glass of water, but her hand trembled. Her partner shifted in his chair, his confidence gone. The men across the table spoke calmly, their words sharp and final. They laid out the transfers, the accounts, the hidden emails, everything she thought no one could ever touch. For the first time, she had no script. I stood outside, hidden among strangers, my chest heavy but steady. For months I had lived in her shadow, waiting for the trap to close, but now it was her turn to feel the walls pressing in. She looked around the cafe as if searching for me, but I did not move. I let her feel the silence, the weight of her own game crashing down. Within hours it was over. Her partner was escorted out in handcuffs, his voice raised but useless. She followed, her eyes hollow, her perfect composure gone. The city that had once been her playground now felt like a cage. She glanced back once, her gaze sweeping the street, and for a moment our eyes met. There was no love in her face, only shock, only the realization that she had been beaten at her own design. When the car pulled away, I felt something I had not felt in months. Freedom. The air seemed lighter, the noise of the city less sharp. I walked slowly, letting the weight slide from my shoulders. The trap that had been built for me was gone, and in its place was a new beginning. My investigator friend met me later that night. He handed me a folder, proof that my name was cleared, that the accounts and transfers were tied to her and her partner alone. He told me to move forward, to live, to stop looking over my shoulder. For once, I believed him. I went home to an empty apartment, the silence loud but clean. For years that space had been filled with lies dressed as love, but now it was only mine. I sat by the window, watching the lights of New York flicker, and I let myself breathe. She had set the trap, she had written the script, but in the end, she was the one who fell. And I, the man she tried to erase, had not only survived, I had won.